Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. Our AI narration lets you delve into the wisdom of timeless books, extracting those golden nuggets of insight. Ready to kind of have our understanding of Jewish history flipped on its head. We always hear that story of exile and persecution, but what if that's just like one tiny piece of a much bigger and more surprising story?
Yeah, definitely.
So you shared The Story of the Jews by Simon Schama. And wow, it is packed with these amazing details that really challenge the common assumptions that we all have about Jewish identity. We're about to uncover some pretty unexpected stories and some, I think, some really mind-blowing facts. So just get ready to really rethink everything you thought you knew about Jewish history and culture.
Yeah, I think one of the things Sama does so well is he really brings depth to a history that's often, simplified. Instead of just focusing on suffering, he uncovers this vibrant kind of tapestry of cultural exchange, intellectual achievements, and even this complex relationship with power.
Yeah, and he really jumps right into it, too. Like, our first stop takes us to Elephantine, which is an island in Egypt centuries before the Roman destruction of Jerusalem, which, you wouldn't expect it.
Right.
But there was this thriving Jewish community there, and they even had their own temple.
And what's so striking is that this community had practices that were different from those in Jerusalem, particularly around intermarriage and stuff.
Right.
And this really raises these questions about the diversity of Jewish beliefs and practices, even within what we might think of as a unified religious identity.
Yeah, and it's really amazing because we get to look through this window into, their daily life, thanks to these ancient papyrus documents that they, left behind, right?
Yeah.
And we actually get to meet these individuals like Ananiah, who was this Jewish man. He married Tamid, an Egyptian woman, and we have their marriage contract, which is, that's unbelievable, right? And it reveals so much about family dynamics and legal arrangements and just how fluid cultural boundaries were at the time.
And the Elephantine papyri, they just really make us think critically about Jewish history. Was it this monolithic experience, just centered in Jerusalem, or were there all these diverse expressions of Judaism all over the ancient?
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about the Bible itself, because we often think of it as this divinely inspired text.
Right.
But how did it actually, come into being? Was it this sudden revelation, or was it more of a human construction that was shaped by historical events and just, beliefs evolving over time?
Right. And Schama, he dives into that evolution of the biblical text, and he reveals that it's this complex formation that happened over time. You have ancient poetry, historical events, and even, shifting religious views all kind of woven together. And it really highlights the human hand in shaping this foundational text.
That's so interesting. And think about this. The shift from oral tradition to a written text.
Right.
For centuries, these stories and laws were just passed down through generations, like by word of mouth.
Yeah.
So when they finally wrote down the Bible, that totally transformed religious practice.
Totally.
And it created this shared sense of identity and belief.
And, it really raises some questions about how just the act of writing down a sacred text impacts its interpretation and authority.
Yeah.
Does a fixed text create a more unified community? Or does it actually lead to disagreements and all these different interpretations?
Yeah. Okay, so now are you ready for this? This is going to be a stereotype-busting revelation, so get ready.
Okay.
So the relationship between Judaism and the classical world, specifically, the Hellenistic period. It's often shown as this one of conflict.
Right.
But Schama shows us that it's way more nuanced. It's a lot more complex than that.
Yeah.
He actually shows that there were these periods of intense cultural exchange and even assimilation.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see how Jewish communities navigated that influence of Greek culture while still, maintaining a distinct identity. It wasn't always resistant. Sometimes it was, adaptation and integration.
And a great example of this is, think about the Judeo-Greek synagogues. They were architectural marvels that blended, the classical aesthetics with Jewish worship practices.
Yeah.
Imagine walking into a synagogue and seeing the story of Noah's Ark depicted in a Greek art style.
Totally.
It's just so cool, and it just shows how they were participating in this larger Hellenistic world.
And then there's the Septuagint, right, which is,
Yeah.
the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. And it
Yeah.
wasn't just this word-for-word translation. It reflects the linguistic and cultural nuances of the Hellenistic world. It
Wow.
shows how Jews were actively engaging with and even reinterpreting their sacred texts within this new cultural context.
Okay, so, but amidst all this cultural exchange, there were also, power struggles and persecution.
Right.
So the Hasmonean dynasty, they started as this symbol of Jewish military might, but they ultimately fell victim to internal divisions and the growing influence of Rome.
And the Hasmoneans, they really offer this cautionary tale about the allure and the danger of power. They highlight the complexities of balancing Jewish tradition with the influences of Hellenistic culture, and they ultimately succumb to those same pitfalls that plague so many powerful empires.
Yeah, and Schama doesn't shy away from the human cost of this period. Like he relays these really poignant tales like the siege of Jerusalem, and he tells the story of Rachel, a Jewish woman, and she's facing these unimaginable choices just to survive in the face of this violence. And it reminds us that history isn't just about, big events and battles. It's about the personal stories of resilience and sacrifice that people make.
Right. And the siege of Jerusalem and the fall of the Hasmoneans, they had this, lasting impact on Jewish thought and identity. They contributed to a sense of historical trauma, but also to this legacy of resistance and adaptability that would be so crucial for future generations.
And this brings us to a pivotal moment, the destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans in 70 CE. Often seen as this like catastrophic event, it actually marked the beginning of a whole new chapter, the diaspora, which was this dispersion of Jewish communities across the world.
And what's often overlooked is how these dispersed communities thrived in all these diverse locations.
Yeah.
From North Africa to Babylonia and beyond, they established these vibrant centers of learning, commerce, and cultural exchange. They weren't just clinging to the past, they were actively shaping their future in these new and unexpected ways.
And one of the most valuable resources for understanding this period is the Cairo Geniza, which is this treasure trove of documents, and it reveals the everyday lives of medieval Jews.
Yeah.
We're talking letters, contracts, poems, even shopping lists.
Yeah. It gives you this glimpse into the homes and minds of these communities. You see their business dealings, their religious practices, their intellectual pursuits, and even their personal relationships. It reminds us that history is made up of the lives of individuals, their hopes and their struggles and their triumphs.
Yeah, and in these documents, we meet these just fascinating individuals like Shmuel ibn Nagrilla, this poet warrior who rose to prominence in Granada. And his story, it really challenges our assumptions about the roles the Jews played in medieval societies.
Totally.
It shows us their diverse talents and their contributions.
Shmuel ibn Nagrilla, he embodies that adaptability and resilience of the Jewish people. He navigated those complexities of power and cultural exchange and left behind a legacy that highlights the dynamism of Jewish identity in a world that's constantly changing.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, I think it's clear that the story of the Jews is not this simple narrative of victimhood. It's a story of survival, yes, but also of adaptation, cultural exchange, and this enduring commitment to their faith and traditions.
And what's truly remarkable is how these communities thrive despite all the challenges they faced, contributing to the intellectual and cultural landscape of the world around them. And we've only just begun to scratch the surface of this fascinating history. So there's another aspect of Jewish history that we often kind of overlook.
Okay.
And that's the relationship between Judaism and the Islamic world.
Oh yeah, that's a good point, because I was always taught that relationship was mainly just like conflict and tension.
Right.
But Schama really paints a much more complex picture, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He challenges that kind of simplistic narrative by highlighting the shared historical and cultural context between the two faiths. Remember, Islam emerged in a region where Jewish communities were already prominent, especially in Arabia. So there were all these overlapping cultural influences and even theological ideas.
Yeah, it's almost like we forget that these religions didn't just develop in isolation.
Right.
They were intertwined from the very beginning.
Totally.
Schama even mentions that Muhammad initially thought that Jews would embrace his new faith as like natural allies.
Exactly. And the Cairo Geniza documents that we talked about earlier, they provide some really fascinating evidence of this complex relationship.
Oh, yeah.
We find examples of Jews and Muslims living side by side, engaging in business transactions, and even adopting elements of each other's cultures.
Yeah, it's just incredible to see how cultural exchange could just like transcend religious boundaries.
Totally.
Schama points out that Jewish communities in Muslim-dominated areas sometimes used Arabic in their writings and even wore clothing styles that were typically associated with Muslims.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that religious and cultural identities aren't always as rigid as we think they are. They can be, fluid and adaptable, influenced by the environment and social interactions.
Yeah. Of course, there were periods of tension and persecution too, like the rise of the Almohads, which was this fiercely fundamentalist Islamic movement in North Africa and Spain.
Right.
That led to a much darker chapter for Jewish communities.
Yeah, the Almohads, they really believed in this strict and uncompromising interpretation of Islam,
Right.
which led to forced conversions and persecution of those who, refused to conform. It was a very challenging time for religious minorities, including Jews.
And this brings us to the story of Maimonides,
Oh, yeah.
who's one of the most influential Jewish thinkers of all time.
Totally.
He was born in Cordoba, Spain, during a period of, relative tolerance.
Hmm.
But his family was forced to flee because of the Almohad persecutions.
Yeah, Maimonides' story is really remarkable. I mean, he eventually settled in Egypt, where he became this renowned physician, philosopher, and legal scholar.
Mm.
And his work addressed these intellectual and spiritual challenges that were faced by Jews who were living in a world where faith and reason often seemed at odds.
And I'm particularly fascinated by his masterpiece, The Guide for the Perplexed.
Yeah.
He actually tried to reconcile Jewish tradition with Aristotelian philosophy, which was hugely influential in the Islamic world at the time. And it just demonstrates how intellectually vibrant Jewish thought was during this period.
Yeah, exactly. Maimonides wasn't afraid to engage with ideas from other cultures and to really grapple with the complexities of faith in a changing world.
Yeah.
His work left this indelible mark on both Jewish and Islamic intellectual traditions.
Yeah. And it's a reminder that, these great thinkers often emerge during times of upheaval and change.
Yeah.
Because it forces them to confront difficult questions and seek new ways of understanding the world.
Totally. And while we're looking at these periods of intellectual exchange and relative tolerance, it's also important to acknowledge that there was this rising anti-Jewish sentiment within Christian Europe at the same time.
Right.
And this led to, increasingly hostile attitudes and actions towards Jewish communities.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to read about the accusations of blood libel and host desecration and ritual murder that became so widespread.
Right.
And these baseless charges just fueled this violence and persecution, and it really reveals that dark side of religious intolerance.
Yeah, and then there's the accusation of usury,
Right.
which is, the lending of money at interest. And that became another way to demonize Jewish communities. And it's particularly ironic because Jews were often forced into this profession because of economic restrictions that were imposed by Christian authorities.
It's just a stark reminder that prejudice and discrimination, they so often stem from ignorance and fear, which leads to the scapegoating of minority groups.
And, amidst all of this turmoil, it's important to remember the remarkable cultural achievements and contributions of Jewish communities, especially during the golden age of Jewish culture in Spain.
Oh, yeah, yeah. This period saw a flourishing of Jewish poetry, philosophy, science, and even cartography.
Totally.
It's almost unbelievable to think that amidst all this persecution, such creativity and intellectual energy could thrive.
Yeah, one figure who really embodies this golden age is Hasdai ibn Shaprut, who was this physician, diplomat, and patron of the arts who served in the court of the Caliph of Cordoba. And he was instrumental in promoting cultural exchange between the Jewish, Muslim, and Christian worlds.
And then you have Judah Halevi, who was a physician and poet, and his philosophical work, the Kuzari, explored the meaning of Jewish identity and that tension between faith and reason. And his poetry, I mean, it continues to be celebrated for its beauty and its really insightful exploration of the human condition.
Don't forget about the Cresques family,
Right.
who was this dynasty of cartographers from Majorca. They created some of the most detailed maps of the medieval world, including the famous Catalan Atlas.
Right.
And these maps, I mean, they weren't just geographical tools, they were works of art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they reflected the Jewish community's curiosity and knowledge of the world.
It's truly amazing to think about all the brilliance and artistry that came out of this period.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity.
Sadly, the Golden Age, it couldn't last forever. You know, rising anti-Jewish sentiment in Spain, fueled by religious intolerance and economic envy, led to this series of persecutions that ultimately culminated in the expulsion of Jews from Spain in 1492.
Yeah, that event, it really marked this tragic turning point in Jewish history. The expulsion of this vibrant and influential community that had contributed so much to Spanish culture and society.
Right.
It was just a devastating loss, I think, for both Spain and the Jewish people.
It's a stark reminder of how quickly tolerance can crumble in the face of fear and prejudice, leaving behind this legacy of pain and displacement.
And yet, even in the face of this expulsion, you know, Jewish communities found ways to survive and to rebuild, dispersing throughout the world and carrying their traditions and culture with them.
Yeah, their story is a testament to the enduring strength and resilience of the Jewish people. A story that continues to inspire and challenge us, you know, to this day. You know, the Jewish story, it's full of these tragic turns, and one that really stands out is the forced conversion of Jewish children in Portugal in 1497. I mean, can you imagine the pain and anguish of these families just torn apart by religious intolerance?
It's just a chilling thought, you know. Schama tells these stories of parents who were just desperately trying to reclaim their children, and they were just met with this unimaginable cruelty from the authorities. It really makes you question how religious fervor can so easily just transform into fanaticism and oppression.
And the psychological impact of those forced conversions, you know, both on the children who were taken and the families that were left behind. It must have been, I mean, just devastating. You know, it's a wound that echoes through generations.
But even amidst all of this tragedy, you know, Jewish communities, they never stopped. They never stopped trying to preserve their traditions and their memories.
Right.
And Schama introduces us to Abraham Zacuto.
Oh, yeah.
Who was this astronomer and historian who fled Spain after the expulsion. And he carried with him this vast knowledge and this burning desire to keep the Jewish story alive.
And Zacuto's book, Sefer Yohasan, it's this incredible chronicle of Jewish history. It's like this tapestry that's woven from fact and legend and myth and memory, and it really highlights the power of storytelling as a means to maintain cultural identity, to transmit knowledge through time.
Yeah, it's really a testament to that indomitable spirit of the Jewish people. It shows us that even in exile, their creativity and intellectual pursuits, they thrive. And this reminds me of something else that Schama explores.
What's that?
Which is the art and architecture of Jewish communities throughout history.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Schama, he takes us on this global tour of synagogues, and he showcases their beauty and diversity, from the Judeo-Greek synagogues with their, you know, classical influences to the breathtaking medieval synagogues of Spain, adorned with all this intricate mudahar stucco work. I mean, these structures, they transcended their function as just places of worship.
Yeah, they became these powerful expressions of Jewish identity and adaptation.
Right.
You know, they reflected the influences of surrounding cultures, but still retained their distinct character.
Totally.
Like the El Transito Synagogue in Toledo, Spain.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, beautiful building.
It incorporates both Hebrew inscriptions from the Psalms and quotations from the Quran in Arabic, which shows this remarkable blending of cultural and religious elements.
Yeah, it challenges the idea that religious boundaries were always, rigid, and it reveals these moments of exchange and collaboration, even in times of tension.
Right. And then there's the Braga Bible,
Yeah.
which was illuminated by Joseph ibn Haim right before the expulsion from Portugal.
Oh yeah, a true masterpiece of Jewish art.
Right.
It's vibrant colors and intricate details and even these playful scenes. They really defy that stereotype of Jewish art as austere.
Right.
It's a testament to that enduring beauty and resilience of Jewish culture, even in the face of this impending upheaval.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive into Schama's The Story of the Jews, what are some of the key insights that really resonate with you?
Well, for me, it's the sheer diversity and complexity of the Jewish experience. It's a story that goes way beyond just, simple narratives of exile and persecution.
Right.
It reveals this rich tapestry of cultural exchange and adaptation and resilience, and these remarkable accomplishments across just so many fields, from science and poetry to cartography.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a powerful reminder that we should always try to understand history in all of its nuance and contradiction, and move beyond these simplistic explanations and the personal stories that are woven throughout the narrative.
Right.
They really highlight the power of memory and storytelling.
Absolutely. The stories that Schama shares, both the grand historical narratives and those intimate glimpses into individual lives, they really linger long after you finish the book. They connect us with the human side of history, and they allow us to appreciate that enduring spirit of us people who face just innumerable challenges, yet never lost their sense of identity or the capacity for creation.
So if you're looking for a thought-provoking journey through history, one that will challenge your assumptions and really broaden your perspectives, I highly recommend picking up The Story of the Jews. It's a book that reveals the depth and complexity of the Jewish experience in a way that I think will stay with you long after you turn that final page.
And for those of you who just, crave more deep dives into these fascinating topics and these thought-provoking conversations, be sure to subscribe
Welcome to Mindful Moments.
And share this episode with your fellow knowledge seekers. We'll be back soon with another episode ready to challenge everything you thought you knew.